Good morning, everybody. My name's Darren Bradley. I'm a cybersecurity specialist here at Comtact, and I'm pleased to be hosting the SASE webinar SASE Made Easy webinar this morning, along with my colleagues Mark Draper and Glenn Williams from Cato Networks. Just a little background to kick things off. So Comtact, as a business, has a 17-year heritage in the provision of managed security services. Over the last 3 years, we've observed an increase in interest in SASE services from existing and new customers alike. The drivers for the individual organizations we work with have varied, but are typically born from cloud transition, network consolidation, and remote access projects, where increases in efficiency and efficacy are set alongside a general desire to control and often reduce operating costs. As such, we've adapted to meet this new demand. So Gartner first coined the phrase SASE in 2019, describing a combination of SD-WAN technology with cloud security functions such as Secure Web Gateway, Firewall as a Service, CASB, Zero Trust networking, and data loss prevention, to name but some. These services should, by Gartner's definition, all be delivered by a single cloud service at the network edge. This is key. There are many organizations delivering component parts of a SASE solution, and indeed, whilst Comtact has traditionally carried some of these component services ourselves, it is only today, through our partnership with Cato Networks, that we can truly claim to offer a complete SASE solution from a single vendor. With Cato, we are able to offer a full suite of SASE services to all of our customers and prospects, regardless of vertical, scale, or location. I'd like now to take a moment to conduct a brief poll to help us understand the core drivers for SASE within your organization. Just give this a couple of seconds to gather the results. Okay, fantastic. So yeah, there's a clear split there between working from home and migration to SD-WAN. So that's a good, clear message, and we can obviously pick up on that as part of the ongoing presentation. So now, without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Mark Draper, who will continue the presentation from Cato Networks.
Thank you, Darren. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Mark Draper. I'm the EMEA Channel Director for Cato, responsible for our partnerships across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. For those of you relatively new to Cato, we're a cloud-based global SD-WAN provider with a built-in fully converged network security stack. So in essence, we effectively enable enterprise organizations to securely connect any location, any cloud instance, and any mobile user, regardless of geographical location. Now, as a company, we're established back in 2015. We're privately owned, headquartered out of Tel Aviv in Israel, and we were founded by two industry veterans, most notably Shlomo Kramer, our CEO, the former founder of Checkpoint and Imperva, and Gershats, our COO, the former founder of Encapsula, which was the first cloud-based anti-DDoS technology to market, which was subsequently acquired by Imperva. Today, we've raised in excess of $532 million worth of investment from some of the world-class leading investors. More importantly, we're now valued in excess of $2.5 billion. So we've doubled our valuation in less than 12 months, and that's being driven by the customer growth that we're seeing. So today, we now support in excess of 1,100 enterprise customers globally. We connect over 17,000 branches and cloud instances, and in excess of 300,000 remote users as well. From a customer standpoint, the reality is we have referenceability across all verticals, and typically the more geographically dispersed these organizations are, the sweeter the spot for Cato, and we'll talk about why that ultimately is. But again, we support organizations like Swissport, the airport logistics company, and all of their global locations. They have over 45,000 remote users. Organizations like Sixt, the German car rental company, they connect over 1,000 of their global sites to the Cato cloud. And again, organizations like Q Park as well, the car parking company, with a presence across Europe, over 547 sites connected to our cloud service. So when we talk about the challenge, I guess the network landscape has evolved dramatically over the past 10 years. We as consumers, we as employers, we access content from a multitude of different networks. We access content from the private cloud and from the public cloud. Clearly, we access content from remote sites, and at the same time, we're leveraging more SaaS-based applications than ever before. Data subsequently is growing exponentially. The amount of data now traversing across these networks has grown tremendously over that period. We're utilizing, again, more devices to access that data. And subsequently, the threat window, therefore, continues to expand. It's much easier now for criminal gangs to launch threats throughout the network. And the way that enterprises have historically dealt with that problem is by deploying more and more point product technology throughout the network to try and eliminate those threats. Multiple products, multiple different operating systems with multiple different management platforms. And that leads to one thing, complexity. And the problem is only getting worse. So if we drill down on a typical customer environment today, typically organizations are connecting their physical locations by leveraging MPLS, a physical connection between their headquarters site or data center and their branch office locations. Now, the challenge with MPLS is that it's capacity constrained. The more data that traverses across that link, the more expensive it becomes. At the same time, there's a complete lack of agility. It can take around 4 to 6 months to actually provision an MPLS circuit. And so what companies have therefore looked at is SD-WAN, or traditional SD-WAN, that effectively augments that MPLS connection. They put mission critical data over their physical MPLS line and less critical information over their SD-WAN connection. Now, the challenge with SD-WAN is effectively it relies on internet to make the connection. And that creates massive performance and latency challenges for enterprises, especially when we start talking about connectivity for global branches or connections into the cloud environments or for the remote user. And so subsequently, to address those challenges, enterprises have had to deploy additional point product technologies to, again, improve that performance. We see cloud acceleration technology deployed, cloud security from the likes of Zscaler. You need a physical firewall in every single one of those branch locations. You need network security and mobile VPN concentrators to, again, address the home working environment. And typically, you can therefore see this complexity build. Again, multiple products, multiple operating systems, multiple different management platforms. And the biggest driver behind all of this is an area in IT that's been spoken about for some time, but the reality is it's here today. Digital transformation. Companies are looking to leverage IT to do one of three things: to improve the customer experience, to improve their own operational efficiencies, but ultimately to transform their business model. It's about delivering services quicker to customers. So we see service providers migrate from 3G to 4G to 5G. We see enterprises migrate from 10 gig to 50 gig to 100 gig. But ultimately, it's the rise in SaaS and SaaS-based applications which is really driving this shift. And the way we see it, and the way Gartner ultimately sees it, as this landscape evolves, technology needs to evolve as well. Digital transformation, the adoption of mobile, of cloud, of edge deployment models is fundamentally changing network traffic patterns. And it's this shift which will make existing networking and security models, like we saw on the previous screen, effectively obsolete. So back in November 2019, Gartner launched this brand new framework, Secure Access Service Edge, or SASE as we now know it. And Gartner talk about the importance of converging all of those legacy point product technologies into a cloud native service. Your SD-WAN, your WAN optimization, your next generation firewall capability, your CASB, your cloud SWG, or your secure web gateway. And again, it's a customer's demand for simplicity, for scalability, for flexibility, which is ultimately driving this convergence. Now, the reality is, although Gartner only framed it in November 2019, we have been doing this since our inception. Back in 2015, Cato's whole vision was to take those legacy technologies and deliver it via the cloud. And so we take the mobile VPN concentrator, we take the cloud acceleration, your cloud security, your next generation firewall capability, and your SD-WAN, and we deliver it to everyone and to everywhere as a fully converged networking and security service through our cloud infrastructure. Now, again, clearly SASE is an area that grows exponentially. You know, if we look at what some of the analysts say, IDG believe that over 91% of IT leaders are interested in SASE solutions today. The market is ultimately now. 650 Group, a market research organization based over in the US, believe the SASE market is likely to grow to 500% by 2025. Deloro put a market valuation on this. They believe the SASE market is likely to hit 5 billion by 2024. And Gartner actually doubled that valuation. They believe this is an $11 billion market within the same time period. And they take that valuation by looking at the aggregate market size for technologies like SD-WAN, like next-gen firewall, and like CASB as well. But clearly, as the market grows, ultimately the competition grows as well. Today, there's over 27 different networking and security vendors claiming SASE. The reality is many cannot deliver it in the way that Cato delivers it today. There's gaps ultimately within their portfolio. And what we begin to see is where those gaps reside, they address it by either acquiring technology or effectively forming alliances with other technology partners. So whereas Palo Alto had no SD-WAN offering, they acquired CloudGenix. Where Zscaler, again, have no SD-WAN offering, they focus on cloud security. They form an alliance with VMware's VeloCloud to deliver the SD-WAN. Netscope the same. And all of a sudden, again, you're creating multiple technologies, multiple operating systems, multiple management platforms. It's not addressing the complexity that ultimately SASE was designed to address. And the way Gartner sees it is that enterprises will consolidate SASE offerings to one single vendor, not a multitude of different alliances. And IDG believe that vendors who are able to provide everything fully converged and under the same umbrella are the ones that will likely succeed. And today, there's only one vendor that can address all elements, and that is Cato. So we'll take a quick audience poll, and then we'll go into more detail around the actual solution itself. So again, what timelines do you have in place in adopting a SASE strategy? Again, no surprise, the market is now, and again, the majority of people on this call believe that the timelines will be within the next 6 to 12 months. So fascinating insights from everybody on the call. So Penny, if you can make Glenn the presenter, then we'll pass over to Glenn, our principal systems engineer for Channel, who will talk about our solution in detail, and again, cover off a demonstration for the offering as well.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks, Mark. It's always so difficult to follow up after you guys. So I hope I can take up to the stand quite nicely. As Mark's mentioned there, I'm principal systems engineer for the channel for EMEA. So I'm in the technical mindset. So this is where we take this journey right now. So as Mark's mentioned there a moment ago, right, we've got quite a sweet spot when it comes to global organizations. It doesn't mean that we are a one-trick pony and can only work with global. We take regional quite nicely as well with our points of presence locations. Now, as you can see on the map in front of you, what we've done is we've depicted this. So you can see there's quite a smattering around EMEA over in the US, and also another one which is very key is down in China. So in China, we have several points of presence. We have to be mindful of things like manufacturing, for instance, whereby organizations are operating out of China. We have the capability for users in China to connect to data centers in London or maybe over in the US through our backbone, which mitigates some of that unpredictability that Mark alluded to earlier. We have our own backbone, which is being created using multiple tier 1 carriers. So think about it as your own private MPLS network going over Cato. So you can see we have some spaces on that map down towards Africa. Johannesburg is our key down there at the moment, with Kenya coming up soon. Now, this is by no means the end of the journey, right? We are heading on an accelerated path at the moment towards 130 points of presence is kind of where we're targeted for at the moment, which will give us pretty much every business area we need to cover. We are bringing up points of presence every 3 to 4 months, and what's most important, 3 points of presence every quarter. What's very important to mention here is these are Cato's points of presence. We're not running them in AWS or Azure or some public cloud. This is our own hardware running in co-location centers like Equinix interconnection. So they're in the internet exchange points, giving us really good peering points to all the SaaS that you require, and also a very good coverage to get across the world should you need to. Now, how does the solution actually hang together aside from that? Well, of course, we've mentioned there that we have that global private backbone. We've depicted 3 points of presence here because you can imagine how messy this slide would look if we had all 70 on there. So it gives you the idea that we have the backbone bringing it together. Now we have 2 facets which are really quite important to discuss, which is the networking and the security, and it brings together that convergence story. As Mark mentioned, right, and Darren at the very start, you can end up with lots of disparate products, right? Point products which have organically grown over the years in the network, and you've got different UIs or CLIs in order to control those. It can become a bit of an IT burden, a bit of an IT overhead, and I think we're all cognizant that during the pandemic there were a number of people within the IT field which were let go because people were working from home and things like that. So IT teams might be quite small. It's a lot to manage, and this is where Comtact can help with, providing that overlay, that managed service for the Cato solution. Now, from a networking standpoint, right, we've got TCP optimization for getting you across the backbone from, let's say, you need to get from San Francisco over to Stockholm, for instance. We can give you an optimized route across the backbone by picking the best carrier. We use GTT and Telia and other organizations such as that to ensure that we have availability on links. So we've got SD-WAN across the world, you could almost say. From a security point of perspective, we have a next generation firewall which gives you the URL filtering and secure web gateway components that you would expect, which is layer 7. So all of this is running up in the point of presence. There's no capacity planning, there's no scalability concerns whereby you've bought an appliance and Cato come knocking on the door in 6 months and go, I'm ever so sorry, you're going to have to buy a bigger box. Because it's all in the cloud, we've got that elasticity, that scalability. So you don't have to be concerned with that. Cato, that's their problem to think about. And we don't just look at the CPU and things like that. We do capacity planning based on opportunities which are coming in through the books. So we're always 12 months ahead of what we require. We also have full TLS decryption, SSL inspection, if you will. That comes as part of the base package. It's not an actual line item. Let's be honest, most traffic out there these days, 96, 97% of it is encrypted. So, we'd be foolhardy to think that adding an extra license for TLS inspection is a nice thing to do to our customer base. What we also have, which came into the stable most recently, is CASB as well, so Cloud Access Security Brokering. That was launched a few months ago, so that's part of the stack. And DLP, data loss prevention or data leakage protection, if you're from the States, has also been brought in. That is now early availability and will be launched by the end of Q2. So we have the full security stack up in the cloud. Again, it's all fully scalable. It's all written by Cato. As Mark mentioned, right, you can end up with organizations who do OEMs and acquisitions. Well, how long does that marriage last, right? Do those companies end up parting ways if it's an OEM? And if it's an acquisition, how does that integration work, and how long does it take for that integration to happen? It's like a jigsaw puzzle where you don't have the box lid in order to know how the pieces go together properly. You've got to figure it out as you go along. Cato have written the code from the ground up. And remember, every one of those 70+ points of presence has the networking and security stack. So you don't come into one point of presence and then have to traverse the backbone to another point of presence to get the security, for instance. Every single location you come into and you'll connect to the nearest location to yourself is where you will have that processing done. Now, Cato have SD-WAN in the form of what we call the socket, right? And it is a socket, it's a conduit to connect to the nearest point of presence. It's zero touch deployment. You just need somebody on site who can connect a power lead, the red lead, the blue lead, and the green lead if you color coordinate your Ethernet connections, and that appliance will stand up. You know, it's got the configuration from what we call the Cato management application, which we'll have a look in a moment to see how that operates. The SD-WAN appliance, the Cato socket, provides you the ability to turn on all of the links. So it's no longer a active backup mechanism whereby you're paying for 2 links, but you're only actually using one. The second one's there in case of failure. With the Cato solution, the SD-WAN piece, you can go active, active, active. We have the ability to steer applications down the best path, which is available at that moment in time, which is all driven by our DPI engine. So it's all layer 7 aware. And then, of course, at the bottom, we've got packet loss mitigation. I personally call it packet racing, because you think about things like voice over IP, it's kind of paramount that those packets get there. So what you can do is you can duplicate the packets over the best available links. The packet which gets to the other side wins, the second packet gets discarded. You get where the packet racing comes from in that sort of instance. Now, it would be foolhardy to think that MPLS is going away today, right? There is a migration strategy. You don't just come in with a forklift and pick up the existing hardware and drive down to the skip and get rid of it. So, you know, we can integrate with the MPLS that you have. We can bring that in. It can connect directly into Cato. We treat it as what we call the alternative WAN network. So, for instance, you might have backups which run between 2 sites. You may not necessarily need to put that through Cato to get the advanced security features. So what do? You can just send it directly between the appliance. It's quite a nice thought there to have. Now you can see here in the middle, right, data center IPsec. It's not just for the data center, it can be for the branch as well. But what we need to think about here is it's a modularized solution. You may already have a security vendor of choice, which you have 18 months of contract. We're not going to come and say, I'm sorry, you have to take the full Cato package. You need to get rid of your existing security stack. That is absolutely not the case. What you could do is establish an IPsec tunnel from your existing firewalls or termination points up to Cato's point of presence. So then you can use Cato's global backbone, and maybe those security appliances don't have the modules for IPS and the advanced threat protection mechanisms. So you can use basic security at your firewall, send the rest up to Cato for the IPS, the CASB, the DLP. So we really can look together towards that vision, that strategy, that 5-year plan, whereby you slowly but surely migrate over to Cato over time. Now, I remember at the beginning there, the first poll was about an MPLS strategy, or rather a migration path from MPLS to internet. There was also that topic of home workers, remote workers. I've been working home for a number of years. I'm quite fortunate, but I have friends who suddenly had to work from home, and they were complaining that the VPN concentrators that their organizations had were creaking and there were problems. Well, Cato have what we call the SDP client, the software-defined perimeter client. We also have a browser-based version that you can avail. It can tie in with your LDAP, it can tie in with SSO, it can do device posturing, so it can do a certain level of understanding to ensure that the device is on, has got the latest Windows update, when antivirus is up to date, and things like that. Extremely powerful. It will connect to the nearest point of presence regardless of where you are in the world. And remember, guys and girls, you know, everywhere, every POP will have that same security profile pushed out to it. So it doesn't matter where Glenn connects, he still gets that same networking and security posture applied. When it comes down to the public cloud, right, we have AWS and Azure where we can deploy the virtualized appliance, the vSocket as we call it. But what about the clouds which we don't necessarily support today? So the Oracle Cloud and GCP. With those, we can use an IPsec tunnel from those public cloud infrastructures into the Cato point of presence, very akin to what we discussed for the bottom middle, whereby you can have that connectivity into Cato for the security and the backbone connectivity. GCP is very much coming down the path very soon. Now, because of where I mentioned that we are in Equinix and interconnection and locations like that, we are housed where the SaaS providers are. So there is a minimal latency to get you to the SaaS which you're consuming, which is, you know, we're all consuming SaaS today, right? I had a conversation with a customer the other day, and, you know, I said to them, what are they doing about their cloud, their WAN transformation journey? And they said they weren't going to the cloud. And I said, okay, that's an interesting conversation. I said, so what are you using for your email? And they said, we're using Office 365. We've just migrated. I was like, okay, let's have a bigger conversation on that SaaS consumption. So we're using it without realizing, and people are going in that direction. And all of this is wrapped up quite nicely in, we've talked about these point solutions. We've talked about different UIs and the complexity of having to manage all of those different appliances, downloading upgrade packages, for instance, getting the correct policy on all those devices. The remote client you're using, you might have to download an upgrade package, or you might have to use an XML file in order to push out the configuration. All of that burden is removed and brought into a single management portal, the Cato Management Application, as we call it, or CMA, to keep it nice and short and succinct. All of this can be delivered as a fully managed service. It can be delivered as co-managed, be DIY, obviously with a preference for you guys to move towards a managed service. It removes that burden to the IT team. Let somebody else take that weight for you. Now, without further ado, what we'll do is we'll switch over seamlessly, I hope, to the management portal. Okay, so the management portal is very much driven from the cloud. Okay, it's cloud native, as Mark mentioned, right? We in 2015 had that mindset in order to move directly to the cloud, right? We didn't want to build a bunch of appliances and then build some UIs to control those. We wanted to have it as a fully converged service from day zero. So as you can see here on the screen, right, this is the management application. Everything has been brought together. At no point do you have to go to a different URL or a different UI in order to control everything. You can see straight away on the dashboard that you can see all of your site locations. You can see where the sites are located. If we click on one of those sites, then what it does is it brings up a little bit of information. You can see that I'm connected here to the Manchester point of presence. This is a single link. It's my home system. From there, what we can do is we can click into network analytics, which will bring up some analytics based on that site. I can see what the loss latency jitter is. I can understand what's happening from a last mile as well. So it's not just necessarily going through the Cato tunnel, but what's going on outside of the Cato tunnel, right? Going to your ISP. How does the zero-touch deployment work? Well, it's very simple, right? If you needed to add a new site, you simply give it a site name. You choose your connection type, which we touched on. So whether it's a physical appliance, whether it's a virtual appliance, or whether you use an IPsec, right? So standards based. It's not some Cato implementation of IPsec. It is fully RFC compliant. You put in some details about the bandwidth and the subnet range, which is on the LAN side. Once you've done that, it's a simple case of giving the appliance some power and some Ethernet connectivity to get to the internet, as I mentioned previously. Then you do an association with that appliance to the configuration that you've created. Appliances are loaded straight into the system for you, so all serial numbers are there. You don't have to do anything whatsoever. We take that away from you. You bring the appliance online, it will pop up underneath the alarm bell here, and then you do a simple marry over. You can see here that most recently there's been an upgrade of the appliance for you seamlessly. Now you can opt out of that if you want to, but we do the appliance upgrades for you. Likewise, we do an upgrade of the SDP client. You don't need to do anything. You can opt out if you wish, but all of that is taken care of for you. Now, if you did need to bring some remote workers online, how do you do that, right? Well, you can add them simply by first name, last name, email address. They'll get an email and they download the client and onboard themselves. But we're living in a modern world, right? That's not always the easiest way to do things. So you can tie in with directory services, either LDAP or SCIM, if you're using SCIM to tie in with Azure AD, for instance. Once you've done all of that, you can import all of your users into the Cato management application. They will then receive an email in order to download the client and then install it. But you can also use tools like SCCM or PDQ or Windows Autopilot in order to push the client out via your GPs, right, your group policies, to ensure that the agent or the client is already installed onto the system. After that, you can simply use single sign-on in order to make that a seamless integration. We also have pre-log-on, which is a useful feature. So, maybe the user has a Windows device and they need to do authentication against the AD before they can actually start consuming resources on your network, then of course we have pre-log on, which is available to you. Now you'll see all of the main IDPs here that you can simply integrate with for SSO. Now, once you've done that, and you've got everything set up, we have the ease here of creating network rules. What do you want to do with your traffic? Maybe you want your traffic to egress from certain points of presence. So here you want to egress from London. How about if you want to egress from a specific public IP address? It's not uncommon today to have to whitelist IP addresses. Maybe you're using Azure ACA, right? So access controls, or your SaaS provider needs to know the public IP address you're coming from. Cato provides you with public IP addresses dedicated to your organizations. It's not what I call a mucky bucket. So London, you're being natted to a public IP address. Here, what you're doing is you're natting to a specific public IP address. From a security perspective, we have two firewalls. We have an internet and a WAN firewall. It's your old familiar firewall, right? So you've got categorization. You can allow, you can block, you can log absolutely everything. Remember that cloud scale. Everything is catered for by Cato. So we have that elastic data lake so that you can log not just blocks, but you can also log the allow and the prompt as well. The WAN firewall is a way for you to provide security mechanisms to control what users can access within your WAN network. So in this instance here, China SDP users can access the AWS and AWS London, but maybe they're blocked from accessing everything else. It's a implicit deny all at the end. Now, it wouldn't be a proper solution unless we had some logging. So we have some application analytics in here that can tell you what applications are consuming the bandwidth within your network. We have a threats dashboard so you can understand your attack vector, right? What are these attacks that are happening on your network? We can then take those and we can go to the events dashboard to understand what these events were. We can see here there's various different attacks going on. We have some presets where we could go and have a look at particular IPS events. Now, for the security folks who may be on the call, we use MITRE ATT&CK framework as a way of understanding when we have our MDR solution. So you can look up what the type of attack it was, and we give you the T codes to look up for every single transaction that is logged. Now, as we mentioned, we have a CASB engine, which is inside the solution. The CASB gives you that visibility to understand what cloud applications are being consumed at the moment. That shadow IT to understand, maybe your corporate policy is to use SharePoint, but some people in the organization are using Dropbox because it's easier for you. And all of that is tied in with our Cloud Apps dashboard. So you can look up the different applications and understand what the risk score is. Now, I think that's kind of given you a little bit of an insight there as to what the solution looks like and how it feels, the components which go with it, and also what the management tool is. Remember, we didn't change URLs there. It was one single converged management tool to control your networking, your security, and to have your analytics. So just rounding this out, I'm going to pass back over to my colleague here to wrap up with an initiative which is running at the moment. So over to you.
Many thanks, Glenn, and thanks, Mark Pryor. So that was a comprehensive overview and some really interesting usage cases there. I do hope that's given you all some food for thought around how the SASE solutions that Cato can provide might apply within your own organizations. If it has, and you'd like to explore some next steps, then we'd be delighted to continue that journey with you. To that end, Comtact and Cato will shortly be hosting a test drive workshop designed to give you a deeper insight into the SASE solution and our partnership. So this is an event that we're hosting in central London on the 14th of June. It's a half-day workshop, and as the slide says, it's for technical decision makers, security architects, and network architects. Although, to be fair, if you have a stake in a SASE solution within the organization and you'd like to attend, then please do talk to us, and we can set your expectations as to whether it's a good event for you to come along to, or whether we set something up specifically to discuss your concerns or your questions in a one-to-one environment. But at the test drive, you'll be able to obviously get a hands-on experience of the Cato platform, meet some of the users that control it. You can go through some more business cases, including obviously any that are particularly relevant to yourself. And it's designed to give you that full overview of the SASE experience. So we're going to be sending invites out to everybody that's attended today. There is a maximum of 10 places available for this one. So if you'd like to come on this day, then please do put a response back to us soon. If we get flooded with more, then we'll run other sessions. That's not a problem at all. Please do send your interest across, and we'll accommodate as befits the replies we get. So we have a little time left before the session closes out. So we're going to open up to a little Q&A just to see whether or not anyone has any questions at this point. If you could advance that, let's have a look.
So I've had a question through the question portal. So somebody has sent in a question saying the global capability looks great, but we're looking for more regional, specifically southern UK. What's the story there?
Okay, shall I take that, Mark, or do you want to
take that one? Yeah. I'll
okay, great. So yeah, no, it's a valid point, right? And some people look at that map and they see all the points of presence and they do wonder what's happening from a regional perspective. We actually have multiple points of presence in the UK. So we have 2 in London, we have 1 in Manchester, and we have 1 over in Dublin as well. So we have very much a localized footprint. We have quite a number of customers who are regionalized in the UK. It's been a way for them to migrate away from their existing on-prem firewalls and have that scalability, while also, I mean, the global backbone doesn't quite so much play a point there for them, but all of the security capabilities which are wrapped up do appetize. So yeah, there's very much a regional story there as well. We have use cases on the Cato website, and of course we can via Comtact provide some customer use cases there for the regional opportunities. Okay, thanks, Penny.
Thank you. I've had another question through. Is there an alternative to your physical appliance? As businesses move heavily towards SDDC model, it seems a bit backwards to implement physical devices.
Yeah, no, I'll take that as well, I guess. So yeah, I mean, it does seem like a bit of an oxymoron within reason, right? To move away from your traditional appliances to use an appliance again. I suppose the crux of this one here is it's more of a consolidation, right? It's taking the stack that you've got of 19-inch rack servers which are buzzing away doing different functions and consolidating them down into a single appliance. The argument could be there, I mean, you could virtualize on-prem, right? Or, I mean, if users are becoming more and more remote, then, you know, and consuming SaaS, maybe the SDP client becomes more appetizing. It's a good conversation to have, basically. Our socket appliance will consolidate down everything that you've got in the rack, and then we can look towards, you know, how we use it. You may have some site locations with less than 10 users. Does it make sense to deploy another appliance, or does it make more sense in order to give them the SDP client, and then they're protected when they're in the office, they're traveling, and when they're at home? So there are different ways to slice this cake. It's a good conversation. It'd be nice to follow up on that one, actually, Penny, if we can get some details and have a wider conversation.
Yeah, no problem. I've also had another question come through. So I'll just read it out. We have a number of sites protected by physical firewalls that use lease lines and fiber broadband to connect to private cloud. These users also connect from home and there is no FW. If there is an option to add cloud-based agents, can we offer FWAS?
Yeah, absolutely, right. So we can wrap that up as security as a service, right? So firewall as a service. That is what Cato can provide in the cloud. So with your private cloud, it'd be good to understand who you're using, I suppose, for your private cloud. There should be an ability to either use the virtualized appliance, the ESX version, or to or to use IPsec in order to bring your private cloud and connect that into Cato. So it becomes an extension rather than some satellite object. It becomes an extension of your network. And then the remote users would have the SDB client connected on their local device. And that's where the WAN firewall would become part of the puzzle, right? So the remote users would go through the Cato firewall as a service, as you quite rightly call it, to restrict or enable their access to different resources and even protect them when they go out to the internet. Again, really good question. I think that's another one which would be good to follow up and have an architectural discussion on. It's a fantastic question, actually. Fantastic one.
Thank you.
So the short answer is yes.
Thank you. And then finally, I've just got a question that just talks about the capability being so good and how that kind of affects the cost.
Mark, I believe that.
Yeah, I'll take that. So in terms of pricing and the way we price from a commercial standpoint, I guess there are 5 core elements. So obviously everything we do is OPEX based. It's 100% OPEX. We're selling a service, not a product in essence. We determine the price by looking at the number of sites and where those sites are located. More importantly, the throughput requirement per site. So bundled into the standard service is your, again, connectivity, your SD-WAN in essence, your next-gen firewall and your secure web gateway. Again, there's additional add-ons that you can look. So the remote user side, we need to know and understand how many users are looking to connect. And then we have some of the advanced security services. So your next generation anti-malware or your CASB or your DLP. So they're additional subscription costs. We then have a whole host of managed services that we can deliver, obviously in conjunction with Comtact, our partner as well. And then there's the sockets itself. So the socket, again, is an OPEX-based model. We sell either 12-month term or 36-month term. And the socket, again, is effectively $15 a month for the X1500. So the money cost is obviously in the service itself. But yeah, that's how we commercially price.
Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, well, thanks, Penny. Were there any other questions, or does that wrap it up for now?
There was a couple of questions, but I think one of them we can take offline and follow up.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we're a couple of minutes over the published time, so if you've stayed on for the questions, then many thanks. Obviously, if you've any further questions, then please do drop them back into the Comtact team, and we'll make sure that you get a response directly. But nothing more to say other than thank you for your time this morning. We'll be in touch within the next few days with the invites for the test drive session, and we hope to see you on another Comtact webinar soon.